When Mark Carney announced he was dropping Canada's retaliatory tariffs, Trump thought he had won. The American president celebrated another victory over a weak foreign leader. But what Trump didn't realize was that he had just walked into the most sophisticated economic trap in modern trade history. The tariffs Carney removed were worthless. The tariffs he capped would cripple key American industries. And the economic strategy behind his decisions was so complex that Trump's team never saw it coming. What looked like Canadian surrender was actually the opening move in an economic chess game that would reshape North American trade forever. This is the inside story of how a former central banker used advanced economic theory to outmaneuver the self-proclaimed master dealmaker. By the time Trump realized what had happened, American businesses were begging him to accept any deal Carney offered. Because in economics, as in chess, the player who sees the most moves ahead always wins. August 2025. The secure conference room in Ottawa had been transformed into a war room for economic strategy. Charts covered walls showing trade flows, tariff impacts, and economic modeling that would challenge PhD economists. At the center sat Mark Carney, surrounded by Canada's most brilliant economic minds. But this wasn't a typical government meeting. Finance Minister Champagne sat across from former Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem. Trade Minister LeBlanc reviewed classified intelligence on American corporate vulnerabilities. The team had been analyzing Trump's tariff strategy for months, looking for weaknesses. "Gentlemen," Carney began with analytical precision, "Trump thinks he's playing checkers. We're going to show him what chess looks like." The room fell silent as Carney activated a display showing the intricate web of Canada-US trade relationships. But this wasn't simplified political data. This was deep economic intelligence that only central bankers normally saw. What Carney revealed would change everything. Trump's tariffs fall into three categories: symbolic tariffs for political theater, strategic tariffs targeting real leverage, and panic tariffs imposed without understanding consequences. Each category was color-coded and cross-referenced with American political vulnerabilities, Canadian alternatives, and European market opportunities secretly negotiated over previous months. Our response will be equally sophisticated. We surrender on symbolic tariffs, fight strategically on leverage tariffs, and exploit panic tariffs to destroy Trump's business support. It was economic warfare disguised as diplomatic compromise. But to execute his strategy, Carney first needed Trump to believe he was winning. August 22, 2025. Carney's secure line rang at exactly the time his intelligence team predicted Trump would call based on psychological profiling of the president's behavior patterns. "Mark, my friend," Trump's voice boomed, "I think it's time we work this out like reasonable people." But every word had been planned weeks in advance. Carney's team had created scripts for different conversation scenarios based on Trump's psychological states and negotiating patterns. The Trump feeling triumphant scenario was labeled #7, and Carney followed it perfectly. "Mr. President," Carney replied with calculated deference, "I appreciate your willingness to find a solution." The tone reinforced Trump's dominance while concealing sophisticated analysis that determined exactly which concessions Canada could afford and which would devastate America. "Here's what I'm thinking," Trump continued, emboldened by perceived weakness. "You drop these retaliatory tariffs hurting American workers, and I'll work with you on sectors that matter to Canada." It was exactly the opening Carney anticipated. "That sounds reasonable, Mr. President. We could remove tariffs on USMCA-covered products. That's most of our trade anyway. This shows good faith while letting you tell American businesses you've restored normal trading." What Carney didn't mention, USMCA products were already tariff-free in practice, making removal purely symbolic. Meanwhile, he'd maintained tariffs on steel, aluminum, and automotive components, where American businesses were most vulnerable. "That's smart thinking, Mark. I like leaders who see the big picture." Trump responded, missing the economic implications completely. Trump had just agreed to Carney's framework designed to maximize American damage while minimizing Canadian costs. If you want to understand how economic strategy can be more powerful than military force, smash that subscribe button, because what Carney did next would prove that in the modern world, trade policy is the ultimate weapon. What made Carney's strategy devastating wasn't just which tariffs he kept, it was the timing and sequencing designed to create maximum disruption in American supply chains. Steel and aluminum tariffs were key to everything. Canadian intelligence identified that American manufacturing critically depended on Canadian steel and aluminum, not just for volume, but for specific grades and alloys difficult to source elsewhere. By maintaining 25% tariffs, Canada forced American manufacturers to accept massive cost increases or completely restructure supply chains. We'll maintain steel and aluminum tariffs while we work intensively to resolve underlying issues, Carney told Trump. Diplomatic code, meaning tariffs would remain indefinitely unless America made concessions Trump was politically incapable of making. Automotive tariffs were even more sophisticated. Canadian automotive components weren't easily replaceable by American or Mexican alternatives. The integrated North American auto industry relied on Canadian precision manufacturing for critical components. By maintaining these tariffs, Carney held the entire American auto industry hostage. Ford, GM, and Stellantis began experiencing supply disruptions within weeks. Cost increases forced American automakers to choose between reduced profits or higher consumer prices, both of which were politically toxic for Trump. Meanwhile, Carney had quietly negotiated alternative markets for Canadian products with European and Asian buyers, ensuring Canadian producers would actually benefit from American market exclusion. The economic trap was so sophisticated that Trump's advisors never saw it coming.
Within 30 days, Carney's strategy's real impact became apparent in American boardrooms. What looked like Canadian surrender was revealing itself as an economic stranglehold on America's most politically important industries. The steel industry broke first. American steel companies that initially supported Trump's tariffs began lobbying frantically for exemptions. Specific grades needed from Canada were critical for infrastructure, defense contracts, and high-end manufacturing that couldn't be sourced domestically at reasonable cost. We're facing 25% cost increases on materials representing 40% of input costs, complained one major steel processor CEO. If these continue, we'll shut 3 facilities and lay off 2,000 workers. Aluminum faced worse disruptions. Canadian aluminum wasn't just cheaper. It was often the only source for aerospace-grade alloys American defense contractors required for military aircraft. But automotive provided the most politically devastating pressure. Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, critical Trump swing states, experienced supply disruptions threatening hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs. The UAW union found themselves blaming Republican trade policy for job losses. "These tariffs are costing American workers their livelihoods," said UAW President Shawn Fain. "Trump promised to protect American manufacturing, but his policies are destroying integrated supply chains American auto workers depend on." The political pressure was exactly what Carney calculated. By maintaining tariffs only where American dependence was greatest, he created situations where Trump's own base demanded relief from Canadian retaliation. Meanwhile, removed tariffs generated positive headlines about Canadian flexibility while having virtually no Canadian economic impact. While American businesses struggled, Carney implemented Phase 2, positioning Canada as preferred North American partner for European trade and investment. Timing was perfect. European companies sought alternatives to American partnerships due to Trump's unpredictable policies and hostile NATO rhetoric. Carney offered stability, a democratic North American partner with abundant resources and sophisticated manufacturing. Within weeks, Carney announced European trade agreements secretly negotiated during previous months. German automakers agreed to source aluminum from Canadian suppliers instead of American ones. French aerospace companies committed to Canadian steel for European defense projects. Nordic countries signed long-term Canadian energy contracts. The European deals served multiple purposes. They provided Canadian businesses more profitable alternative markets than American sales. They demonstrated Canada had options, making Canadian threats credible. They created European interests and maintaining good Canadian relationships, providing diplomatic support internationally. Most importantly, they gave Carney leverage. American businesses wanting Canadian access would have to compete with Europeans offering better terms and respectful treatment. But the masterstroke was energy. Canada redirected LNG exports from American buyers to Europeans desperate to reduce Russian energy dependence. Contracts provided Canada higher revenues while offering Europeans more reliable supplies than Russia or America could guarantee. Energy deals particularly devastated Trump's prospects in Republican states like Texas and Louisiana, dependent on energy exports for growth. By September 2025, political and economic pressure from Trump's own business community became unsustainable. What he'd celebrated as victory was revealing itself as economic disaster for American manufacturing. The tipping point came when GM announced potential plant closures. We're considering significant restructuring due to ongoing supply chain disruptions from Canadian tariffs, GM CEO stated, sending automotive stocks plummeting. The current situation is unsustainable for American manufacturing. Similar warnings followed from Ford, Stellantis, and major parts suppliers. The UAW organized protests outside Trump properties demanding he stop the trade war killing American jobs. Trump's response was typically chaotic. Instead of quiet negotiation, he launched desperate attacks, highlighting his administration's economic incompetence. Canada is ripping off American workers with unfair tariffs. We gave them everything, and they're still attacking our companies. Time to get much tougher. The posts revealed Trump never understood what he'd agreed to. Economic analysts pointed out Trump was complaining about Canadian tariffs his own administration had agreed to maintain. The confusion damaged credibility with business leaders already frustrated by his inability to resolve disputes. What do you think about Trump's handling of this pressure? Was this incompetence, or was there method to the madness? Drop your analysis in the comments. I'm curious if you think Trump could have played this differently, or if Carney's trap was too sophisticated to escape. By October 2025, Trump faced unprecedented revolt from the business community traditionally supporting Republican trade policies. Rebellion began in automotive. The Motor Equipment Manufacturers Association published an open letter demanding immediate Canadian trade dispute resolution. Signed by 200-plus executives, it directly blamed Trump's policies for job losses and factory closures. Current policies are destroying integrated supply chains that made American manufacturing competitive, the letter stated. We urge immediate action to restore normal Canadian trading relations before more jobs are lost. Steel and aluminum industries followed with similar statements. The American Iron and Steel Institute, initially supporting Trump's tariffs as foreign competition protection, now demanded exemptions from Canadian retaliation, costing manufacturers billions. Most politically damaging was energy company revolt. Texas energy corporations losing European contracts to Canadian competitors began openly criticizing Trump's policies. The American Petroleum Institute showed trade disputes cost $12 billion in lost European sales. American energy companies are losing market share because political instability makes European customers choose Canadian suppliers, offering reliability American companies can no longer guarantee. Corporate pressure created impossible politics for Trump. His core supporters demanded policies that made him appear weak and defeated, but maintaining tough rhetoric cost American swing state jobs needed for re-election. Several Republican senators began calling for more constructive Canadian engagement. Maine's Susan Collins directly criticized Trump's approach. Maine businesses depend on stable northern trading relationships. This situation hurts Maine workers and needs quick resolution. As pressure mounted through fall 2025, Carney prepared his economic strategy's final phase. The tariff chess game had trapped Trump unsustainably, but Carney's goal was permanently reshaping North American trading relationships in Canada's favor. The endgame strategy was brilliantly simple. Rather than demanding American concessions, Carney would let Trump propose face-saving solutions, actually giving Canada everything it wanted. By letting Trump appear to initiate improvements, Carney could achieve strategic victories while allowing tactical wins claims. In November, Carney authorized exploratory discussions with American officials about resolving disputes. Discussions offered American negotiators several tension-reducing options, all designed benefiting Canadian interests. First option, American recognition of Canadian critical supplier status, exempting Canadian exports from future tariff threats while requiring American businesses maintain minimum Canadian import levels. Second, joint North American infrastructure projects funded by American investment but managed through Canadian expertise, effectively subsidizing Canadian industry while creating American financial dependence. Third was most sophisticated, a North American economic stability framework requiring both countries consult before implementing bilateral trade policies. While presented as mutual constraint, it gave Canada effective veto power over American actions while preserving Canadian flexibility for alternative relationships. All options gave Trump victory opportunities while permanently constraining American trade pressure ability against Canada. December 2025, Trump announced the most successful trade renegotiation in American history with Canada. The agreement incorporated elements from all three Carney-designed options, giving Canada unprecedented autonomy while letting Trump claim credit. The agreement was everything Carney worked toward. Critical supplier status protected Canadian exports from future American tariffs. Joint infrastructure pumped American capital into Canadian projects. The stability framework gave Canada institutional protection while preserving freedom to expand European and Asian relationships. Most importantly, it established precedents for how middle powers could resist superpower economic pressure through sophisticated strategy rather than direct confrontation. This shows what's possible when leaders focus on results instead of rhetoric, Carney stated. The comment let Trump interpret it as praise while highlighting the contrast between Canadian strategic thinking and American impulsive policymaking. Trump's response confirmed he never understood what happened. Great deal with Canada. PM Carney knows how to make deals that work. This is what happens when you negotiate from strength, Trump posted, apparently unaware he'd just permanently constrained American economic leverage over Canada. The chess game was over. Carney achieved every objective while letting Trump believe he'd won. American businesses got needed stability. Canadian industry secured protected American access plus alternative partnership freedom. But most importantly, Carney demonstrated economic warfare could be more effective than military confrontation. The former central banker proved that understanding economic complexity defeats simple force shows. Trump played checkers with tariffs. Carney played chess with the entire North American economy. When the game ended, only one player understood what really happened.